which is one of those supplementary agenda items. Sorry, we're just going to take some advice because there are two parts to a report, one that's PX and one that's in the open session, and so I just need to, yeah. So, no, we're just going to get some advice, so just... Right, so we'll deal with the first Part A item, which is the Riccarton Public Transport Hub. Because there's a PX element to it, it might be better to actually hold that over until we get to the towards the end of the well, as we're about to go into PX, it might be better to deal with it there on the agenda. Is that all right? Okay, so we'll defer item 1, the first Part A item on this report, and then so we're on to trees and health issues. Page 468. I think on these very long agendas we're going to have page references on the agenda. It will be good. Well, coming up on the screen for me, but 468. Right, trees. Okay, so Phil, you would like to move this, and
yes,
Tim would like to second it?
Well, I'll move it
yeah,
and speak to it.
Right. So have we got staff that are available for the trees and health issues?
Yes, we've got Andrew Rutledge.
It's page 468 is the beginning of the report, and the recommendation is on page
477.
476 to 7.
Yep.
477. And there's a committee recommendation and a staff recommendation with some amendments. So did you move the committee recommendation?
I'll move it as a committee chair and speak to it.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So have we got questions, or do we want to have some commentary to start with, or? I mean, the committee's already dealt with this, so why don't we just, has anyone got any questions they'd like to put to staff? Yep. Raf.
So how do you define a clinical immunologist?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yeah. How do you define a clinical immunologist compared to, say, alternative practitioners?
How do we define it? We would defer to the DHB on how they define it.
Well, you must know.
Beg your pardon?
You must know if you're making this recommendation.
The author of the report should be on his way, so we might have to just defer that question. We have notified him that it's up.
Yep, no, that's good. And you weren't expecting it to come up because you probably thought there was going to be a lengthy debate about a Riccarton transport hub.
Right, yes.
So that's good. Jamie, then Yanni.
Yeah, what about distance from the resident's home? Because when I've seen this, it's been that someone has lived, right beside this. Is that covered in there?
We haven't specified tree, I guess the relationship between the tree and the home, because of course pollen can move quite some distance.
I guess why I raise that is that you want to be tight around it, that it's if it's their place of residency, and basically you can't have people coming along saying get rid of half the trees in Heckley Park or a number of trees there. You want it within a certain distance, I would imagine, to where they live or reside.
It's a tricky situation because, of course, we can only talk about council-owned assets, and there may well be that particular species next door in a private asset, in a private home. So rather than try and determine zones, we have literally confined this report to our assets, so to speak, publicly owned assets.
I guess, though, I felt from reading this that it may leave it open if someone loves to go along. Now, obviously, if they had an allergy and the park was full of silver birches, they'd be silly to continue to go to that park.
Yeah.
But it does really leave it open that if they can get a letter from their doctor saying that these trees make them ill, that they could effectively have something that's quite a long way away from where they live, affecting them adversely.
Shane might like to add to the distance, the question around distance.
One of the things that we're asking the medical practice to confirm is that given the extent of the vegetation that has allergenic pollen in the air at the same time as silver birch, and the fact that there are other silver birch trees, if we're solely talking about silver birch, there are a lot of privately owned silver birch around the city. Whether or not that particular tree that they're asking to be removed is the sole cause of that person's ailment, and whether or not the removal of that tree is the sole option available. We're also asking them to confirm that there are or are no medical options available. Included in the medical option is things like dietary requirements. We're aware that some people have oral allergy syndrome, but people with allergies to peanuts, they don't eat things with peanuts, and people with that are gluten intolerant, they don't eat things with gluten in. So perhaps they could look at changing their diet if they have an oral allergy. So medical is kind of loosely termed.
Around that, because this is a tricky one, and Whenua Maori Community Board, so I know all about it. Is it true, or is it a malicious rumour, that there are actually that the human population or residents in Christchurch, there are more allergies to grass than what there are silver birches, as in a grass allergy is more common?
That has been confirmed by the Medical Officer of Health, and his comment is in the report. Under 4.15.3, grass pollens cause far more allergic reactions than silver birch. So yes, that's been confirmed by the Medical Officer.
So is there a policy in the works to look at removal of the grass if people fund half of it?
No.
Yanni?
I think the staff recommendation wasn't that it was 50-50, but the committee have recommended 50-50. So I don't know if it's a more appropriate question for the committee, but did you give consideration to the people that, if they couldn't afford that and they had health issues, what their impact would be?
We certainly did consider that issue, and for that reason I didn't support the this committee decision by moving it pro forma. And I think there is an issue in relation to affordability, and that even if it's, for example, residents are obliged to contribute up 50%, clearly there'll be many residents who couldn't afford to pay for tree removal. So in fact, in my view, the policy would be, if it's 50-50, will be quite unfair.
Is the 50-50 for the total life of that, that 1,200, or is it just for the removal, which probably is around $400? It is the replacement as well, and the life tending of the, because that $1,000 something's got other costs involved in it as well.
No, it's got the first 3 years maintenance.
Yeah, first 3 years maintenance, sorry.
Not the life.
Yeah, where it needs a bit of nurturing.
Correct.
Yep. Andrew?
Given the advice from the Medical Officer of Health in paragraphs 4.14 and 4.15, and then comparing that with the paragraph 7.1 of the staff recommendation and the committee recommendation, is it not fair to say when the Medical Officer of Health is saying removal of silver birch trees is unlikely to reduce allergic reactions for the following reasons, and that's the grass pollens and the ability for a small amount of pollen to disperse over a wide area and so on. Is the bar not set so high that this policy is unlikely to be able to be used? You know, it almost seems that it's unlikely that a person is going to be able to prove that a tree is the sole cause of the condition they're experiencing, so it's unlikely that anybody will get something through the policy?
The working party that's working on the tree policy feels that we should only be removing trees for health reasons in what they're saying are rare and exceptional circumstances. And until we sit down and figure out some clear defining of what that actually means, then we think that this is the best way to go in the meantime, which is why we're calling it an interim policy. But the intent of the wording between the two will not differ. So we don't envisage that a lot of people will be able to fulfil these criteria, but there will be some.
Are there any other questions? Yes. Jimmy Chen.
Only one question regarding to the staff recommendation 7.7. The committee add on one paragraph here. I just want to ask you whether this is reviewed in 12 months' time is appropriate or not. Your view.
I think it is appropriate. We'll be reviewing it between now and when we put the report up to the council for adoption of the proper tree policy.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, please.
Yeah, sorry, I think that review is a good idea, because have you had any conversations with people who have removed silver birches to see what the impact has been?
No, I don't believe we have.
I think that would be quite useful information. So obviously in Fennelton Waimari we've had quite a few removals, and it would be good to get the evidence back to say, okay, has this made a difference? What kind of difference has it made?
Yep.
So could that be part of that review?
That can be part of that review, yes.
Okay. Pauline?
Just on 7.8, page 477, so you've requested an increase in capex funding, and I've worked that out to be about 130,000. So how many trees does that represent anticipating removing?
That would be just over 100 a year, and that's what we hope would be the worst case scenario.
100 a year?
Yeah. But we're hoping that is the worst case scenario, but until it's out there for a period of time, we are guessing at how much we're going to have to.
So, I mean, I just heard before that you think that wouldn't be very many.
We're hoping that it's not, but until it's tested, we don't know.
So you want that funding allocated in case we get applications granted for 100?
Correct.
Phil?
Thanks, Shane. You've indicated like there's going to be extremely strict criteria. And I just want to clarify though that the total of that of 7.8, which Pauline has referred to, in fact that's the total that it would cost council. And in fact, if council were to ask for a 50-50 contribution, we could estimate, in fact, the amount would be half of that.
That's correct.
The total would be no more, expected to be no more than this.
Correct. And just can I point out that we've been asked to remove 39 silver birches in Remstone Drive. And if we go down that track, that will trigger a lot more requests citywide. So there is a possibility that, well, we're calling them the floodgates, they may open.
Paul?
I just have to say I'm a little bit bewildered by the whole thing, with where you have a bunch of trees silver birches, and you could have a number of properties that have them on private properties. So essentially the issue is not going to go away, is it?
No.
So we're going to spend a lot of money removing a lot of trees. I don't believe the issue is going to disappear. I mean, Canterbury itself has a lot of pollen that floats right across the city with the winds, and they come from all directions depending on the wind. And to me, this seems a lot of money for something I don't think is really going to do a great deal.
Glenn, and then I think Jamie has another question.
My question is in relation to the recommendation, page 477, just about the reasonability of asking members of the community to go 50-50. So the recommendation above talks about trees on council-owned land. I don't know whether I'm drawing the right parallel or not in relation to our pressure systems, and I myself have raised that issue. Is it actually fair to ask members of the public to pay when it's on council-owned land? So is that reasonable, that we would expect people to actually have to pay 50% of the cost?
If I might give part of the response, perhaps. I think in signalling to the public that there may be a cost, that helps to perhaps mitigate the floodgates opening. If people think, hey, I might have a crack at this because I don't really like that tree, it may not be anything to do with health issues. I think indicators like that may make people think seriously about whether or not they want to pursue it. And I think the intent is not to try to get money back. The intent of this interim policy is to give community boards a tool by which they can consider valid requests. But there's two parts to it, really.
Yeah, I can see your view. I'm just wondering, it just sounds a bit too cynical for me, but that
No, I don't think that's fair. So I think that the point that we're being asked to adopt a policy with some caution, because we don't actually know what the implications are. Yes. And in the financial situation that the council faces at the moment, I don't think it's unreasonable for staff to present an option that that considers, that considers that there is a shared cost in the removal and replacement. So I'm sure that people are already thinking that perhaps with people who genuinely meet the criteria but can't afford to make the contribution, there may be another path for them to obtain support for paying for their share. But I think that that's the way I'd rather deal with it than to sort of question the proposal in the way that you have. I think that would be a better way forward, is to look for a solution to that problem rather than... I think that staff have genuinely worked hard to try and find a mechanism to make an interim policy workable for community boards while the real policy is worked on. Jamie.
Two questions just for the chair of that, so for you, Phil. One, is the intention around this that if this was exercised and accepted, that it would be a tree for tree removal and replacement? So if there were, say, 2 silver birches that are removed, then 2 appropriate species go in?
Well, my understanding, it has to be reasonable, and like it may well be that 2 trees are removed, and it's better to replace with 1 tree rather than having a new species being overcrowded, for example. Mm. But that
makes sense. Okay, and the only other one is, assuming this was passed where it was a 50-50 split, do you think, and you're a good person to answer this given your community board chair background, do you think that if there was a really genuine case where there was a resident struggling and having a really hard time with this, that they could potentially apply to, say, the community board's discretionary fund for assistance with that other half, or perhaps another avenue?
I guess there's always other avenues, but I think we know that those other avenues are always very difficult for people to obtain money, especially, say, in cases like these. And I would, while I'm speaking on that, I would say that I don't want to support the last part of the committee's recommendation on the basis that this solution really will end up being only for those who can afford it. And clearly the criteria are really strong in terms of being strict around that the applicant would have to prove that the tree is the sole cause of their illness.
Okay, so, well, I think on the basis of that, I should put the resolution. Yeah. I'm going to suggest though that when we put the resolution, that we put it in two parts. That I'll put 7.1. Sorry, I'll put 7.7 separately. Is that right?
I say that is what I had in my mind with this is if you were going to put it, I was going to debate it and move an amendment to it. But I don't want to get into the debate if it's inappropriate to right now.
No, it is absolutely appropriate to get into the debate. I'm not going to put the motion. I'm just suggesting that I might put 7.7 separately because it is 7.7 is the one that creates the cost share.
Okay. So
is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
So
That's right.
the balance of the recommendation 7.1 to 7.6 can be dealt with as one group, and 7.7 can be dealt with.
Well, could I debate 7.7 then if that's the path?
Yeah, no, but you can debate them all. It's not, I'm not going to split up the debate. I'm just trying to find a way rather than people having to amend the motion, which is essentially to delete one paragraph. Yep.
So on the staff recommendation 7.1, I'd quite like to change the word sole cause to say major cause. How do we deal with that?
That's moving an amendment, yeah. So,
Everyone.
I mean, let's
So-
get the amendments on the table, but I am going to deal with 7.7 separately. So I thought by signalling that to you, then you don't need to move an amendment to try and change the wording of it. It's you're either for the cost share or you're not. If we don't have 7.7, then the cost lies with the council, is that right?
Not necessarily. My amendment was going to be that actually the applicant pays for all that. So don't want to give too much away, but sorry, I'm talking.
Okay, right, all right, well then, okay, that's not going to work. So RAF is wanting to move that the words sole cause become major cause. It's going to have to go right throughout, so. Well, hang on a minute. No. We will debate these. So don't sweat the small stuff. It's perfectly in order for a councillor to move an amendment. Is there anywhere else in the recommendations that require that to be?
Seven 7.2.6. I just think, I mean, it's impossible. I mean, there's no way you can prove that
Yeah.
is the sole cause. I mean, rule everyone out, basically.
Sorry? Right, so I will second that motion. Yep, that's an amendment, so it's been moved and seconded.
Yeah.
Now, are there
Does
other
that- but then-
amendments that we want to get on the table? So we can just deal with we can find a logical sequence. So you want to change 7.7 so that it refers that the cost is borne by the applicant?
I was wondering, Leanne, though, if it may be worth doing the 7.1 first, and then depending on how that goes, well, actually, no, it's relevant. Do you want me to pop up what I was thinking? The
Yeah, because
7.7?
I just,
I've got the words there.
yeah.
It just simply says it's everything that the committee recommendation has in 7.7, and it reads up until this point, trees will be borne by the applicant, and that is reviewed in 12 months' time.
Right.
And I'll speak to it if I can briefly. My rationale why.
All right. And then, so do we have the seconder for that amendment? That the costs are fully borne by the applicant? That fails for the want of a seconder, Jamie, I'm sorry? That fails for the want of a seconder. Okay. Well, why on earth would you have major cause if you, I mean, why would you want to have any criteria if the applicant was going to pay for it all?
No, because I don't want just people that have got a bit of cash in the bank that don't like silver birches to be able to remove them willy-nilly.
And have them replaced?
And have them replaced.
But it's,
Well, whatever
Okay.
tree, appropriate species
Alright.
in the area. Fruit tree perhaps, if that will help sway the council.
right. Okay. So we've got that one moved and seconded, but I don't like its chances given I couldn't find a seconder when you were talking to each other.
If you let me tell you that, you may realise that your original thing
Yeah,
was
but I
all
know.
very silly.
The persuasive nature of your debate will turn people, I'm sure. So, and are there any other amendments to the, because there is another one around the 50-50, isn't there?
That would be that be delete that part, deleted.
So that it,
That we delete the part.
and so that it just simply says, stops at borne by the council. Well, actually, it's exactly the same as the GovT one, except that the word applicant is the council. So if you could cut and paste 7.7. And herein lies the problem, because you've moved it, you can't really move an amendment to it, can you? So,
Council,
I know.
council, and then there's no note on this because that'll.
Well, when we come to it. Can I just suggest that, like that, let's see how many trees we're dealing with, and then who pays what? So it's either a share or the council or the applicant. Yeah.
Yes.
So they're the issues. So, so I'm just trying to work out what is the best order to deal with them in. I mean, I'll deal with the major first. Well, let's get that one out of the way first, because otherwise. Did you have a suggestion?
I was looking at 6.3.2, and because option 2 is the one that is being recommended, that information doesn't appear to be being included unless I've missed it. And I think that information from that doesn't even make sense, that information for the community board actually is really important, and also as important as record keeping and keeping an eye on outcomes. And I just wonder whether that information, 6.3.2 can be included. Would anyone have any particular problems with that being included in the option 2?
No.
It's not in option 2,
No,
it's
it's
in
not.
option 1.
Yeah, okay, so the whole of 6.3, can we have that as part of the staff recommendation? I mean, part of the actual, the recommendation, so...
I actually think 6.3.1 is slightly problematic as far as the timeline goes, and might stretch out the process. My real
Yeah, but
focus
this is asking to ensure that all pending and future reports to community boards relating to tree removal requests contain the minimum information as follows. So,
but not 6.3.1. My focus was on 6.3.2. I think 6.3.1 is slightly unnecessary as far as potentially protracting a
Yeah.
process.
Yeah.
I think it's just, it will make it more difficult, but I do think that the information in 6.3.2 is necessary for the community board to be able to make
Yeah.
an informed decision.
6.1 refers to, correct me if I'm wrong, but the
Yeah,
normal
but
process.
some of it's already
outside
there.
this.
Up-to-date advice from the medical officer health is dealt with in 7.4. So,
Yeah, but not the map, not the calendar, and not.
no,
factual
that's right. That's what
Right.
I'm trying
Oh,
to
I'm sorry.
find what's missing. So,
Right.